Moses was sort of at the top, but he didn't have anything to do because it was all bottom up. All the problems that had anything to do with what was going on within the community were all handled on the local level. And the founders understood this. In fact, what they wanted to do is they wanted to put a picture of their ideal for the seal of the United States was the burning bush on one side and these Anglo-Saxon kings on the other side, because they kept that indigenous power where it was supposed to be, using that principle of 10 families and 50 families and all that. So what the founders did is they basically said, okay, the power in this structure is going to be from the bottom up. If there was a power pyramid, the individual would be at the base, because the wide part of the base, that's where all the power is. Then the family was the next unit. Then the 10 families was the next unit. Then the 50 families, and on up. Well, what the founders did is they said the individual was going to be at the base of our community, of our pyramid, and then the township, and then the county, and then the state, and then the federal government was up here with very little power. All the power was down here with the people. It was the same concept. That's what their understanding was. In other words, bottom-up government. That was the concept. So I have these pyramids in here. It explains it. It explains it for people so that they can understand the difference between bottom-up government and top-down government. What's happened in the last 100 years? Who's at the top of the pyramid now? Yeah, that pyramid has been inverted. So now it's an upside-down pyramid with the federal government up here with all the power, then the states with all this power, and the counties and the community, and then the individual is down here at the bottom with no power at all. So that in 100 years, in the last 100 years, they've inverted that power pyramid from this, with the people at the bottom with all the power, to this, with the federal government at the top with all the power. That's what's happened. So I explain that in here. I'm just trying to give you an idea of what I've done in here so you can spread this out, and because it explains it really clear. Now, bottom-up government versus top-down government. What are the attributes? Well, in top-down government, what's the first attribute? I mean, in terms of the emotion that is created by top-down, where there's command and control and everything is force-based, what's the first thing?
Fear.
Fear, exactly.
Yeah.
Now, with bottom-up, where individuals and families are the main unit, what's the main emotion?
Love.
Love. So, right away, when you look at the difference, bottom-up, love is a predominant emotion that is sort of predominant. And in top-down, fear, right-left. Stop talking about conservative liberal. Stop talking about any of these other things. Talk about bottom-up versus top-down. Because guess what? When you look at the advantages of bottom-up, about half the issues that are out there, the Democrats, the liberals, are okay on. And about half the issues the Republicans are okay on. It's those others that they're screwed up on. And those others are where force comes in. You know, the Democrats are okay on,
war,
civil liberties, war, drugs, things like that. The Republicans are okay on people paying less taxes. At least they talk that way. And less government and those things. So theoretically, the Republicans have half the issues right, and the Democrats have half the issues right. So stop talking about Republican, Democrat. They just use that, and left, right, liberal, conservative. They use that to divide us. And there are a lot of people out there that if they understood the concept of bottom-up government, and you didn't talk about conservative, liberal, and all that stuff, they would start to join our cause. That's my idea anyway. I don't know if you agree or not, but I think that what we need to do is we need to recruit millions of people to our cause. Millions. Yeah.
Well, and with the so then what? So like somebody would get elected or something, and we'd be in the same thing again?
No, I tell you what. I think it comes back to what Ed and I have. We're at and Sylvia, we're at the Continental Congress. I mean, I think that the Constitution could be and should be probably the vehicle to bring everyone together. Right, left, Democrat, liberal, whatever.
No labels.
Because really, it's the law of the land, for one. And the fundamental principles are consistent with what we believe in. The fundamental principles the Constitution was based on. If you read if you guys go to articlesofreedom.us, and you read what the work that we did there, the work piece that we created, the Articles of Freedom, you'll see an amazing document. I mean, a document that is totally consistent with those first 2 paragraphs of the Declaration of Independence. Yes?
You thought about making a YouTube video?
There are videos. I mean, if you go to articlesoffreedom.us, you can see all the videos of the presentations that Ed and Sylvia and I saw.
Your book matter.
My book,
Yeah.
what I'm doing right now, it takes about 2 hours to read this, maybe 2.5. We did a 2-hour CD. You can go to the website and download the CD. You can go to the website and read this for free on a PDF file, commonsenserevisited.com. What I just finished last week, it's not quite finished being proofread yet. I went through this and chopped 60% of it out and just kept the core of it. So somebody could read it in 45 minutes to an hour. So we could, have you guys seen those pocket constitutions? We're going to put this in one of those, a booklet that big. So we can probably be able to buy them for 3 or 4 cents. And you guys could have thousands of them and just give them away to everybody you see. And the core of it, it can be done. I don't think it loses much by knocking out 60%, which doesn't say much for my writing ability. But it's very concise. It's going to be a very concise form. It's still got, I've got to read you some of these quotes, man. I love these quotes. This is one of my favorite quotes of all time right here. This is a quote from Jefferson. This is the stuff that just gets me going. This he said in 1809, after he'd been president for 8 years. The principles on which we engage, somebody was asking him how they did everything that they did with, freeing our country. The principles on which we engaged, of which the charter of our independence is the record, were sanctioned by the laws of our being, and we but obeyed them in pursuing undeviatingly the course they called forth. Doesn't that just send chills up your spine? I mean, that's what it's all about right there. These are fundamental universal laws of nature that we're talking about. We were born to be free. And what's happened, and I got a chapter on this, it's called What Happened? What happened? How did we get turned from a bottom up to a top down? Well, for 100 years now, we've been subjected to a campaign. A very subtle, very powerful, very intelligently run campaign to make us slaves. And they've infiltrated our political parties. They've infiltrated all the institutions, all the surrogates, and education particularly.
You hijack the whole government.
They being those who are in power, the people who run the surrogates, particularly the bankers, the international bankers, who run our Federal Reserve. This all started about 100 years ago. Not surprised.
The dominant criminal minority.
Yeah, the power elite. I like to call it power. I like that title, power elite. Yes.
Something that occurred to me is when the Constitution was signed, they did very little taxes at that time. Correct?
No, the only taxes were indirect taxes,
And then,
excise taxes.
Okay,
Yeah.
so, but then what happened? Then the more the people in politics, or the government, it's just people, started raising taxes, and then they had more guns than everybody in the United States. That's the
It's a
problem.
subtle thing, but it has to do when you guys have heard of Democracy in America by de Tocqueville. He wrote it in 1835. It's actually, I didn't know this until I did my own research, but de Tocqueville was Lafayette's grandnephew or great nephew. Lafayette, the general who, if we hadn't been here, we probably wouldn't have won the war. But listen to this quote he wrote Democracy, a brilliant guy, absolutely brilliant, incredibly insightful and perceptive.